Thank you. Thank you for, it's just very moving. I couldn't agree with you more, Andrea, just to see people from around the country and from different communities across all denominations who are engaging with the eco-Judaism and eco-synagogue projects. And I'm really just very, very grateful. It's extremely heartening, and times in the world are not easy. And this absolutely, as you said, Andrea, it gives one the courage and the energy and the determination to continue that. This is important. This is something people are wanting to do. So a very, very big thank you to everybody for their time and their effort and for joining this evening. And a thank you to you, Andrea, Angelina, and also Donna, having joined the team as well. So JTree started really very close before lockdown. And we kind of then restarted it with more energy and more help in the last few months. The idea for, I've always loved trees. Personally, I've always been a keen gardener, but I also been very aware of the presence of trees in the Torah. I mean, this we're beginning with Breshit, with Eitz HaChayim B'toch Hagan, the tree of life in the midst of the garden, which to the mystics is the tree which is nourished by God's spiritual energy and from which all things that grow on earth derive. But the practical sort of trees are important throughout the Jewish sources, because whoever the authors were of the Hebrew Bible and the Mishnah and the Talmud, they lived close to the land. They understood the importance of trees and seasons, birds and plants. Abraham, for example, plants an eshel, a terebinth tree. I've never quite found out what kind of tree it is. And the trees are counted that he buys with the plot at Machpelah. And like I said, all through the Hebrew Bible, the importance of trees is stressed. In the Mishnah, in the tractate which deals with forgotten sheaves and forgotten fruits, in tractate Peah, we learn that even some farmers named their trees. They would call their olive tree, whatever it was, David or Fred, because it was such an important part of life that it was virtually part of the family. So the cherishing of trees is absolutely central throughout our sources. And the laws concerning needless waste and destruction derive from the tree as well. We're told that in battle, if you're besieging a city, Lo tashchit et eitzah, you may not destroy its trees if they are fruit trees, ki mimenu tochel, because they produce fruit from which you will eat. And that became the kind of the basis as it got expanded outwards through Jewish lawmaking for all kinds of needless waste. So to move from the sources to our contemporary world, I happened to hear a report by Professor Crowther. This was in 2019, in the summer. He'd been researching, based at Geneva University, the world's need for trees. This will come as absolutely no surprise to anybody. And he was talking in the trillions of the numbers of trees. And what he also did was name the countries where they were most needed. And some of them are obvious. I think we hope that the Brazilian elections lead to a change of leadership and a change of attitude to the Amazon, the Congo, Indonesia, but which are not really accessible to Jewish communities and are complicated places, many of them, to work with. But he also named North America, Canada, the UK, Ireland, Russia, actually, as countries which are depopulated in tree terms and need rewilding and reforestation. And I thought, well, here are at least 4 of these countries where there are Jewish communities. And I spoke to Jonathan Drury, who's been a great supporter of all our projects. He wrote this book, Round the World in 80 Trees. And he's been a senior trustee of Kew and the Woodland Trust, and also to Jonathan Friedland. And that led to the creation of JTree, which was the aim was to plant trees through well-accredited organizations ecologically and ethically. And what that means is that the organizations need to have a sound record in terms of planting the right trees in the right places, in the right conditions, and not as kind of carbon cheats, as kind of carbon sinks for which the land is bought off local communities. On the contrary, local communities have to be engaged in the project. They have to be of local benefit and available and open to community. So they need to be ethically sound, ecologically sound, and socially sound. And with much debate, because there are a number of excellent tree planting organizations, for instance, Tree Aid, which I've often personally supported, we settled on the Woodland Trust in Britain and the International Tree Foundation in Africa. And we've worked with them particularly in Uganda and Kenya, and we're closely in touch with their leadership. And they've particularly used the money raised through us for local women's groups who are able to plant relatively small numbers of trees, 100 trees maybe, but they produce an income, for instance, shea butter, which enables people to live because they can sell the product, and then it also has environmental gains. So one's thinking the human, the environmental, the sustainable, all of it together. Angelina is going to describe, and Seed Madagascar, thank you very much for reminding me of that, which is actually led by somebody who's been very involved in this project. And now we're also cataloging, and Angelina will explain when she explains the website, local initiatives. You might plant a mini orchard, or you might decide that you're going to become a trustee of a piece of woodland. And we love those stories, and we want to know about those stories because we're cherishing trees on all kinds of levels. And trees they're important to us ecologically, they're important economically, they're important socially, they're important psychologically for our mental health, and they're important spiritually. I found a source in the Mahsor just the day before yesterday that trees pray. I'm sure everybody knew that anyway, because you feel it in your soul. So the aim is that people can plant trees by hand, personally, and also pay and sponsor tree planting. And we have a parallel organization in America, which has been very active, and particularly a new lease of life in terms of encouraging people to plant trees for all kinds of life cycle events, particularly B'nai Mitzvah. It's a familiar part of Jewish life. So that's the project, and we're hoping very, very much to be able to expand it, because trees are things which people love as well. And with all the various kind of don'ts and things which we're wary about with the climate crisis, trees are a do. You can plant them, you can love them, you can enjoy them, you can make more of them. So it's a very engaging and positive part of the whole environmental project. And this is the Jewish community's contribution. The United Synagogue has got its own sort of scheme, but it's also cataloging what it does in collaboration with JTree, which is really excellent. I'm not sure of the latest figures, but we're something around 17,500 trees, maybe more by now. Angelina will know and will tell us. And in America, it's around 50,000. But that's been through the difficult period of lockdown where we've managed to keep going. We hope to do a lot more now. On the practical side, the rabbis involved in the Eco Judaism project, we were together planting at Enfield Chase, where there's a major planting scheme on agroforestry, and also to prevent massive flooding and runoff. I'm very much hoping that at least some of the trees we planted survived the drought, but no doubt they'll be replanting there. And that is on our doorstep for us down here, Northern Londoners. So there's much to do. There's a lot of enthusiasm, and it's a lovely project to be engaged in. With that, I'll shut up and take, I think, 2 or 3 questions, if that's okay, before we go to you, Angelina, for the more practical side.
Has anyone got any questions for Jonathan about the project itself?
Alan.
Alan, do you want to go first? I saw your hand first.
Yeah, I was waving. Sorry, I was late for the meeting. I had another 3 meetings tonight. So.
Hi, Alan. Good to see you.
Yeah. Good to see everybody. Yeah, trees are very, very important. And as also I'm a councillor in Epping Forest, we're planting lots and lots of trees. I was involved in planting 500 trees recently at our Limes Farm development. And also, I joined Donna planting some trees beside the sort of A1.
It was next to the North Circular, actually.
Yeah.
We planted 600 trees. We fell about in the mud. We had a wonderful time.
Yep, and it was an incredible afternoon, or maybe even longer, and lots of trees. I don't know how they're actually surviving, but it was a great initiative.
Thank you.
And I would encourage everybody, if there is an opportunity to plant trees, to do so. I know this was something that was very close to our late Queen's heart, the Queen's Green Canopy, which she wanted to extend across the whole of the UK. So I would encourage that. Thank you very much, Rabbi Wittenberg. It was really quite important, and I fully appreciate and support what you've been saying. Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, we quietly planted 96 trees in honor of the Queen through JTree. I'd very love to meet you in Epping Forest.
Please do.
Thank you. With something to be arranged in the near future. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, and one other thing before I go. Sorry, Andrea. I did have the pleasure of working for Her Majesty as a guide at Buckingham Palace for 10 years. So, I'll shut up now.
That's it. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Any more questions for Rabbi Wittenberg about a JTree or the project or anything? Or shall we? Oh, Rabbi Mark, I see you waving.
You're on mute.
Yeah, unmuted. Done. Right. Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. So one of the things I was wondering about JTree, in our synagogue, we have the tradition of planting Tu B'Shvat trees, which I suspect many do. And we're trying to actually, one of the things you said, which is mini orcharding using the synagogue grounds. And, you know, one day that we'll be able to tell the story of it by hanging some fruit from our trees in the sukkah and those sorts of things, and trying to link it into our festival and our year-round observance. Is there anything in the JTree project around synagogues and where they've planted trees, or, you know, sort of in a way celebrating it and passing it down generations? You know, we plant trees in Cannons Park as well each year, which is one of our local parks, and we've done it in other local parks as well with local groups. But I was wondering if there's something about celebrating it and kind of recording it as that building of Jewish community work in this area. You know,
I think this is a question for me to answer a little bit later, if you don't mind, Rabbi Mark. It is actually something that we're doing.
But it also goes with the development of the site to carry different, you know, all kinds of stories around trees. And one of the things I found is that families to whom I gave as a bar or bat mitzvah present or a wedding present a tree for their garden 25 years ago will talk about the fact that they've had a good harvest from that tree, or that sort of the intergenerational nature of trees and the way their story carries on is a wonderful, wonderful part of it.
I think you've just solved my wedding present problem for the future. Thank you very much.
Also, we've noticed, and it's one of the things to have as part of one story, being very keen visitors to Scotland. We've watched over the years as very young woodland has become rich in biodiversity and life. And I think chronicling that over time, perhaps telling the story year by year, is something we can develop. Thank you, and thank you to everybody. I'm going to
thank you very much, Jonathan.
Now. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you. But before, I'm going to ask Angelina to give us some more practical overview of what the JTree project is. I just want to tell you that I'm going to put in the chat. We started a while ago a WhatsApp group for the eco teams, because we see each other once a quarter, but sometimes things come up in discussion that we either want to follow up with each other or we want to ask a further question. And I realized when I looked at it today that actually it's me, Angelina, and Leslie and John, and that's the only people on the chat. So I'm going to put the link for that chat into the Zoom chat. And if you'd like to join yourself to that WhatsApp group, you can do. And then we have a way of connecting with questions that we might want to expand on during the times that we're not together. And Angelina, over to you.
Thank you. No pressure. Nice to see you all again after so long. It was what Alan was saying about tree planting being so special for Her late Majesty, that it is still the Queen's canopy. We are coming up to tree planting season again, and we do hope to be doing something very significant in memory of the late Queen, as part of the Queen's canopy, as the Jewish community through JTree. And there'll be more to come on that soon. What I want to do is also answer Rabbi Mark's question, and I will share with you now the website that we have of JTree, and I'll go through what you can do to engage with us. So can you see that okay, everyone? Andrea? Yep, that's great. So as Jonathan said, that's how many trees we have planted since January 2020. JTree USA has actually planted around 70,000 trees by now. So there's a real enthusiasm on doing this. But it is important to plant trees. And in here we have one of the reasons why under resources is the carbon storage, the carbon cycle. Many of us hear about we're emitting too much carbon, we need to reduce it. This will explain to you through different resources how we are doing that, how the planet is, the carbon on the planet is not the way it should be. We're sending too much up into the sky, and we are deforesting, and we're removing these opportunities to store carbon back in the earth where it should be. So if you take a look on the website under resources, you'll see here an explanation on the carbon cycle, but also from the Forest Research Agency, you can get an idea of how much carbon a tree will store. So different trees have different levels of how much carbon they store over a period of time. And furthermore in here, about, as Rabbi Jonathan said, it has to be beneficial also socially. There has to be an element of social justice here as well. So you can learn about what our projects do in tree planting and engaging communities. And then also how important it is to plant trees in the right place through our partners, Woodland Trust and International Tree Foundation, to combat climate change. And then we also have this focus on rewilding. And the rewilding section of the website has lots of different ways that you can help maintain ecosystems and habitats, because trees that grow in their natural habitat live for much longer. And we also have the connection here to 360 carbon. Now, Andrea is going to talk more about that later, but it's important because we need to know how much carbon we are emitting. And if you do look here, you can have a look at what sort of trees can be planted in order to store carbon. We're not using the word offsetting here, we're using carbon storage, because unfortunately offsetting has been connected with many greenwashing schemes and so on. Our projects are sound channels. So very quickly, what we do is we offer you 3 options to engage. If you can't plant trees, or if you want to raise money to plant trees here in the UK or in one of our partner projects in other countries, you can donate. And that's a very simple process. You can hit donate here, or you can hit donate here, and you can do it as an individual, you yourself, or as a community. We made this option so that you basically get a certificate once you've planted trees through donating. And this goes to our project partners and it's shared among them. And basically it comes round at £5 for one tree. And you just put in here, if you're an individual or a community like a synagogue, the name, which will appear on the certificate, email, your message. We get messages for a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, for a wedding. We have people dedicating trees for a life cycle event, and then how much you want to donate. And then you go through to the next stage, which is payment. And you will automatically receive a certificate of your donation. And the trees that you plant will be added to the total number planted by the Jewish community here. And here you have some information on the projects that we're giving the money to. So with the International Tree Foundation, this is helping women in Uganda. They need to plant trees for two reasons, one because of flooding and one because of wildfires. So they're learning how to plant trees and what trees to plant to prevent wildfires or to reduce them, but they also plant trees to protect their homes and their land from landslides. So it's very interesting. We have quite a few videos on this that you can look at. And then we have the Woodland Trust at Langley Vale, which is a memorial, basically. It's a forest dedicated to those who fell in the First World War. So you can read a bit more about that on the website. So that's the first thing that you can do, is to donate as an individual or as a community. And if you donate as a community, like my synagogue, West London Synagogue did, you will get your own page and it will feature how many trees you've planted, and then a story about why you planted the trees through donating. The second thing that we offer is this register a tree, which Rabbi Jonathan was talking about, and this is coming to Rabbi Mark's question. How can we have some sort of record there of what the community is doing if you're planting a tree in memory? Well, we have this very simple thing. It works a bit like the Queen's Canopy. You literally go in and you register the trees you plant. So if we go here, again, you can do it as an individual or as a community. And Barbara at Barnet and Alan both were planting in early this year, and they've already registered the trees that they planted. And what we do with this is we take some basic information. If you're an individual planting a tree in your garden, or if you're a community, and then you just put in here a bit of a description of why you were doing the planting, how many trees, where you planted it, on when you planted it, and then some photos, and you register. When that happens, each one of them is individually approved, and then it's added to the total number of trees planted by the Jewish community, and you get a page that features your tree planting. So here, for example, 600 trees planted by Barnet United, along with Alan. And here you can see the story that they've included when they've put in their registration. Here are the lovely photos. And there's no photos of anyone falling in the mud, but it looks quite muddy. And that will get basically included as well in our news section here. So there's when Eco Synagogue planted in Enfield Chase. Here's where Barnet did, and you can click in there and read more about it. And you can share that on Facebook or Twitter. And you can, the whole idea here is to see what people are doing, to hear the individual stories, but also to share them among the community. And we'll also be including a feature on the Eco Synagogue newsletter each time with any planting initiatives that have come. Now, the final step that you can get involved is through planting yourself, getting involved in projects. At the moment, we're waiting for some projects to come through where we can invite you to join. And when that happens, you'll go to Get Planting, join a project. And here is 2 examples of maintenance projects that were happening in May. I've left them on there so you can see how it will appear. So if, for example, Leslie at Edinburgh wants to do tree planting with Newcastle Reform, and they would like to invite the community to join in, we will include the date that you're planting, where it is, and basically we can include the option to contact us at JTree to connect you. Or if you're happy, then you can be contacted directly. At the same time, if you want to plan a project yourself for a bar mitzvah, for example, to plant trees, you can let us know through here. And we're putting a new section on about planning a project, which will include information about how you can source free trees for school projects or synagogue projects through the Woodland Trust, where to plant them, etc. So that's the final step, is getting planting, joining projects, and this will become more and more populated over the next few months. A number of partners through the Woodland Trust have upcoming planting opportunities UK-wide, and we're going to look at each one of them and then see if it's something that you might be interested in. We'll put it on the website and you can join those individually or as a synagogue. But when you plant them, come along and register the tree so that you can share it with all of us here. And those are the main things. I will show you one thing more, is rewilding, as I discussed, is very important. And these are all resources, from wildflowers to road verges. It includes petitions. It includes ways that you can contact your local council and ask them to do this or that. It gives you advice on things you can do yourself. And it's not just about more plants, it's about biodiversity, insects, wildlife. And there's a little bit there about peatlands as well, because they store phenomenal amounts of carbon. So that's basically it. That's where we're at. We would really love to hear a lot about what you're doing. And we have these channels where we can share them in our news and register them. But what would be really good is if you do a project with your shul or however you do it, if you would be happy to do a case study in the same way that Eco Synagogue does, and we'll include them on the website and share them out. And I'm absolutely happy to answer any questions now. If you want to learn more about the partners, it's under the partners section, these different projects that the money goes to through donations. And that's about it. There's also the urban planting opportunity if you do live in the city. These projects here will help you put a tree on your street, which is a lot harder than some of us think it is. So I'm finished with that. I'm happy to take any questions you have.
That's amazing, Angelina. Thank you very much. Do you want to unshare your screen and then people can answer? What I would say is that this is a really important partnership project for Eco Synagogue, because it feeds into what we're doing at Eco Synagogue and hopefully when we become a charity, Eco Judaism as a whole. So people can engage with JTree on many levels, either as an individual and plant trees, and as Angelina said, use them for bar and bat mitzvahs and presents. It feeds directly into the audit. So in your communities, if you're progressing through the environmental audit, it helps with the questions that we identified in the poster. And also for Eco Shabbat, there are numerous resources on the JTree website, which you can get involved with as part of your Eco Shabbat activities. So picking some of those off to do some tree planting will be a very successful hands-on way of engaging with Eco Shabbat as well. So it's an amazing resource. Angelina, you've done an amazing job with that website and it looks fantastic. And thank you. And I did put in the chat Angelina will be creating a resource, hopefully with the video from tonight as well. And as soon as that's ready, I will send that out to the whole database. And if you join the WhatsApp group, the EcoTeams WhatsApp group, then we can put that on there before I send it out to everybody else as well. So any questions for Angelina?
Yes, may I ask a question?
Hi, Menachem.
Of course, Menachem.
Well, it looks as if on this scheme you're charging £5 per tree, yet United Synagogue scheme is charging £20 per tree. Is there a reason for such a big discrepancy?
Well, it's not a discrepancy, so to speak, because the idea was from the very start that we don't want all the money going to one project and not to others. It's important to plant here in the UK, but it's also important to help other projects in countries where it's badly needed. So what we have done is we've worked it out at how much it costs to spread it out equally, and that comes out at £5 per tree.
Right. So the reason is that United Synagogue is concentrated in the UK.
They are, I believe
the,
so.
the costs
Possibly,
are higher.
yeah, possibly, yes. Yes.
Okay. And if you're going abroad, do you have the safeguards? Because with a lot of those countries, half the money disappears into people's pockets. So
Yeah, I know.
What is the situation here?
As Jonathan said, it's these have to be sound channels. They have to be people that we know, like the International Tree Foundation. We have constant updates from them on what they're doing and where they're planting, and they provide reports. Same with Seed Madagascar. So these are our trusted partners. I do know what you're talking about, but for us, it's not the case because we're constantly getting the updates from them on where trees are planted and what it's doing. And we have these reports with statistics as well. Oh.
Thank you.
Sorry, my internet just dropped. Did you hear me?
I think we heard most of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we're sorry, we did hear
Ruth?
you.
Ruth?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Anybody else? Leslie.
Leslie.
Yeah, I just thank you for all that. I wanted to, you mentioned, Angelina mentioned Eco Shabbat. Maybe that's not a relevant question for JTree, but I'm wonder what Eco Shabbat is. Have we had an Eco Shabbat? I've forgotten.
Last year.
We did. We had one last year. Do you remember when you were hosting various people from COP26? That Shabbat
Oh,
was
yes,
the first.
yes,
Yeah. So that was our first Eco Shabbat. You were a bit tied up with all the COP hospitality. But you did have a speaker, I seem to recall. You had a very big speaker.
Yes, that's right.
You?
You're absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right. Yes, of course.
So what we did last year is we decided that at a time where the whole world is going to be focusing on climate issues during COP, and there's COP every year, instead of having it during the summer, which for some reason we'd had like a green Shabbat before, we're definitely always having it in that midst of that Shabbat that is during COP, because it's a way of making sure that the Jewish community can also have a voice, discuss, think about it, highlight it in shores, and that's why it's there. I will talk more about Eco Shabbat in when Angelina is finished.
Well, I think what the connection there with Eco Shabbat and with JTree is, first of all, this is tree planting season coming up just as we have Eco Shabbat. And what we did last year at Eco Synagogue was encourage people to make commitments. So it could be something as part of your own Eco Shabbat that you make a commitment to plant trees or to rewild, or that you'll do them yourselves, or you'll run an appeal to raise money to donate to the projects on JTree, for example, and you get a certificate for that as well. Or you go out and you actually plant them and then you register them on JTree as well. So there's also those rewilding projects as well that all add up. So that's how you could do it, for example.
And Mark's got a question, Angelina.
Hi, Mark.
Yeah, thank you very much. And reminded about Eco Shabbat, JTree, trees, etc. And Jonathan's point about the fruit trees at a time of war as being a torment. Because Eco Shabbat this year is 12th of November, some of our synagogues are going to be involved in sort of Ajek Shabbat and such like, and Remembrance Sunday. And one thing that that we're planning on doing is talking about the devastation of the environment at times of war. And instead of, oh, it's all a bit awkward that Eco Shabbat's the same as our Remembrance Day Shabbat, I think it all links rather beautifully together. And some of that, the tree planting that JTree does, absolutely are in places which have been scourged by war. So there's something that can bring those things together. And also the Jewish message about, even in a time of war, do not destroy the environment, because that's not what you're making war with, or shouldn't be.
Absolutely, and the project at Langley Vale with the Woodland Trust is a centenary memorial park. It's literally a forest in memory of those who fell, and this is why it's good to also plant trees in memory of someone. And you'll also see on the website under life cycle events, if you're interested to learn more about woodland burials, it's on the website. I don't know if you've heard about woodland burials, but it's this basically, rather than having a graveyard, you'll actually have a forest. So there's information about that on the website as well. Does anybody?
I think I was just going to come back to Rabbi Goldsmith's point. The rabbinic team for Eco Shabbat, for Eco Synagogue, Eco Judaism, are all going to be writing some pieces of inspiration for us all to use. So I'm hoping that maybe Rabbi Mark's one will be on that subject, on how on Remembrance Weekend and the devastation and replanting. So that's one I'll remind you about, Mark, for your contribution. Thank you.
That is something that Remembrance Shabbat is sometimes overlapping with Eco Shabbat. JTree has also got a section on the links to the Jewish text. So if you are writing articles for your community newsletter and you want to include something in there about tree planting, especially this time of year, or Tu B'Shvat, so you can go along to the website and you can look at the references in Jewish text. There are some there now, and there's going to be a whole lot more basically next month for you to see. There's going to be quite a lot of things happening with JTree over the next month, so you'll hear a lot about that from Eco Synagogue as well. I do actually have a question for all of you, if you don't mind. Is anyone here planning on planting some trees with your synagogue or as individuals? Alan?
Yeah, I planted trees for my grandchildren under the Jubilee celebrations, and that was part of the US initiative. So yeah, that was when I did it. It was just for to get them interested really in sustainability and keeping the planet green.
So Alan, if you can, you want to come along to JTree's website and register the trees you planted, along with some photos, and we'll include them.
Just looked up the actual the application, so it was part of Project Dorot.
Yes, Dorot. Yes.
So the way that that's going to work with Dorot is that Naomi Verba, who started it, is on maternity leave at the moment. But when she gets back, and the idea is that the Dorot project in its the Dorot tree planting project in its entirety will put their entire United Synagogue forest that they are raising money for and planting trees, and that will go on the JTree website as also as a Jewish UK initiative to show all of our trees, so that we come together as a community rather than having pockets of tree planting everywhere else. So it should all come together.
If you are hoping to do tree planting, get in touch with JTree. because we can help out in different ways. Leslie?
I contacted the Woodland Trust before the summer to see if they had any tree planting that we could send a group along to, and they did. She did come back to me with a project where farmland has been transformed into different areas, and they were planting thousands of trees. So we arranged to go there one Sunday, and unfortunately a group of Boy Scouts got in front of us, and they got all the trees to plant that day, not us, and we ended up planting wildflowers or something. So at the very end of the day, we got to put bark round trees that they had planted, but we didn't actually manage to plant the trees. So I don't know, they may have more trees coming up, but it's quite a big project.
Well, keep an eye on that website. No, for sure, there'll be more. I just want to the one thing, coming back to the environmental audit, one of the questions on there is your synagogue involved in any conservation? So we talked about the tree planting projects that have been done, the one that Donna did with Alan in Brent Cross and various other ones. And what we did for the first time, which was very exciting recently, was a reverse Tashlich. I hope that Mark's listening to me because he was there. So the reverse Tashlich program was actually, it's a worldwide river cleaning, Jewish river cleaning community initiative. And Rabbi Mark was running that for us here. So I don't know, Mark, are you there? Can you hear? Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I can. Right, okay, so my virtual backgrounds are actually pictures from this. I think what I want to share about this was basically in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It was finding a body of water. Our shul mixed together with another shul that's members of Eco Synagogue, West London Synagogue. We found somewhere in between us both. But most importantly, we joined with a local group, the Friends of Welsh Harp in this particular case. So that meant that we weren't kind of playing at it. We were joining their work to conserve this body of water and adding kind of extra workforce effectively. And it was a very, very special thing. One of the things that happened is we discovered quite a lot of the people who were Friends of Welsh Heart were also Jewish and had never really linked together their Judaism and their eco aspect of their lives. So it was a very special opportunity to do so. Following that, we ended up with a lovely picture in the JC where I'm taking a sock out of the Welsh Harp reservoir. We also took an entire mattress out, lots of bottles of drink and all kinds of things. It was quite remarkable what we found in there. We then put that out a little bit, and Maidenhead Synagogue, for example, has come back and said, we should try and do the same with the River Thames that's near us. But again, they're going to try and find a local group that's already doing conservation work and joining in with them. So I think the thing I'd love to say is, I think this is way more valuable if you join with people who are already doing this work. And I think some of our members of our synagogues are likely to be more involved with it in the future. So that was reverse Tashlich in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It was a really lovely thing to do.
And it's something that we're hoping, it was a bit of an experiment this year, and it's something that we're hoping that next year people will engage with even more. It is for everyone. You can either join together like West London and Edgware and Hendon did and do one project, or you can come together with other people or join projects that are already there, and you register on the reverse Tashlich, the worldwide, the global initiative.
It's actually
which is also nice.
It's actually called Repair the Sea.
Repair the Sea.
The whole idea began in South Florida, and of course what was very poignant was that in fact that week a lot of those Repair the Sea projects had become impossible because of the storms that were there, which of course, as we all know, is part of the environmental issue that we're all dealing with. So there was a lot of poignancy in all sorts of ways.
Oh, fantastic project. So I'm going to just round up a little. There's a few things that